Hello viewers, welcome to K Diagnostics, Dio here. Today we have a 2006 GMC Savannah with a 6.0 liter. The complaint on this vehicle is the horn doesn't work. When the horn button is pushed on the steering wheel, nothing happens. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna confirm the complaint. After confirming the complaint, we're gonna talk about what directions we're gonna go so we can figure out what's causing the horn to not work on this vehicle. So now let's confirm the complaint. I'm gonna push down on the horn button. So right there, as you can see, the horn is not working. So driver's complaint confirmed. The horn doesn't work. So I'm going to turn the key on. Let's see if it's gonna work with the key on. So key is on. Okay, still nothing. So even with the engine running, the horn is not working. So I'm gonna turn off the engine. So right there, we have confirmed the driver's complaint. The horn doesn't work. So what are we gonna do to fix this? Well, on this vehicle, I believe the horn circuit is pretty basic. There's a relay, the horn switch, and the horn itself. The horn relay is inside the fuse box under the hood. So let's start by checking the horn relay first. And I believe there is also a fuse that sends power to the relay. And then when you press this button down, the relay gets energized and then power is sent down to the horn, and then the horn works. Now, we could have bad horns, we could have a bad relay, or a blown fuse. So let's start with the easy things first. Let's go under the hood and check the horn relay and the horn fuse. So I'm gonna open the fuse box. Let's get this cover out here. So let's look at this fuse layout. So the horn fuse is fuse 15. So right here, 15, it says horn, and fuse 15 is right over here. Okay, so right there, fuse 15. After checking the fuse, if the fuse is good, we're gonna check the relay. And the horn relay is relay 59, so this relay over here. So right here, 59 says horn. Okay, so let's check the fuse first. We're gonna use this test light to check our horn fuse. My test light is connected to battery ground. If I touch positive, the test light should light. So right there, test light lights. So my test light is good. So now let's test fuse 15. So fuse 15 is this fuse over here. Okay, so the fifth fuse down this way. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this one, this is fuse 15, and it's a 50 amp fuse. So we're gonna test this right there. So first side of the fuse is good. So test light lights. So let's check the other side. So right there, test light lights also. So the horn fuse is good. Okay, so the fuse is good. So now we're gonna check the relay. Now the horn relay is this one over here. Okay, now the horn is right here. We could check the horn first. Okay, we could go straight to the horn and send power to it to see if our horn is gonna work. Okay, so that's one thing to do. Okay, but what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna stick to my diagnosis process. Let's check the relay, because here at the relay we can also energize the horns to see if the horns are gonna blow. Okay, if the horns work when we energize them over here, that will tell us that from the relay down to the horns are good. Okay, so I'm gonna So this over here is the horn relay, so I'm going to remove it. So here comes our horn relay. Now all these relays over here are all the same. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna swap these relays. Okay, so this other relay is the headlight relay. So I'm gonna remove this relay and put it over here and see if our horn is gonna work. If the horn works, that will tell me that our issue is just the relay. So since we put this relay down here, now let's go in the vehicle and try the horn and see if the horn is gonna work. I'm sorry for the buzzing noise in the background. The key is still on the dash. So now we're gonna try the horn. As you can see, the horn is still not working. So let's go back under the hood. Our problem is still there. We swapped the relay. The horn is still not working. So I'm gonna remove this relay and put it back where it was. Okay, so our problem is most likely not the relay and not the fuse either. Okay, we could have defective horns. So let's look at the horn relay once again. So here is our horn relay, and this is a little diagram of how a relay works. So there is power at pin 30 and pin 86. When this switch closes, power flows from pin 30 down to pin 87 to energize the horn. So the way this works is when we press the horn button on the steering wheel, we send ground down pin 85 over here, pin 85. And since there is power down pin 86 over here, this coil gets energized and it pulls this switch towards the left to close the switch, which allows power to flow from pin 30 down to pin 87. Okay, so this switch over here closes to complete the circuit from pin 30 to pin 87 to turn on the horn. Okay, and that happens when the relay is energized. I hope you guys can see these numbers very well. Okay, so this is a 5-pin relay. If we send power down pin 87, if our horns are good, the horns should work. Okay, and this vehicle has 2 horns. There's one horn over here and there's another one over there. So now what I want to do, kind of to check the horns first, because we could have bad horns. It's very unlikely to have 2 horns go bad at the same time, but let's check them first to see if our problem is just the horns. So we're gonna send power down pin 87 to see if the horns are gonna work. If the horns work when we send power down pin 87, we're gonna know that our issue is gonna be from the relay going up towards the horn button itself. Okay, so let me zoom you guys over here inside the fuse box. All right, so pin 87 is gonna be this pin over here at the corner. Okay, let me show you pin 87 on the relay. So pin 87 is gonna be this one over here. Okay, so since the relay sits down this way, so this over here is pin 87. So now we're gonna use this test lead over here to send power to pin 87. Okay, so this jumper wire is connected to my yellow test lead. Now, I'm getting power from battery positive with this red test lead. I have a fuse, okay, in this jumper wire, just in case. So since I have power over here, if I touch this jumper wire to this red jumper wire, if the horns are good, the horn should work. Did you hear that? Okay, so when we send power to pin 87, the horn work. Okay, so now we know that our problem is not the horn. Okay, so our horns are good. So I can remove this test lead. I can get these leads out of the way. So we sent power down pin 87 and the horn worked. So we know from the relay down to the horn that circuit is good. But when we push the button on the steering wheel, the horn doesn't work. So the relay is good, the fuse is good. So where is the problem? Now let's look at the wiring diagram and see how this horn is wired, and then we're going to talk about what else we need to do to figure out where the problem is. Here is the horn circuit. We checked fuse 15. This fuse is good. We checked the horn relay. The relay is good. And we sent power on this leg of the circuit. When we sent power over here, okay, at pin 87, over here at the relay, the horn worked. Okay, so the horns worked, which tells me that this leg of the circuit is good. So this side and the ground wire over here is good. So this side of the circuit is good. Now, since we have a good fuse, now what we need to do is we have to make sure that we have power at this point of the relay. So the relay should have two powers. So we should have power over here and over here. Okay, so we already checked the fuse. So now what we need to do is we have to go back under the hood and make sure we have two powers at the relay. Okay, at the relay socket. If we have two powers at the relay socket, then our problem is going to be on this side of the circuit. Okay, and if we look at this side of the circuit, we have this wire, the 10 wire over here, so 10, and if we highlight this wire goes to the body control unit. Okay, and the same wire goes down the turn signal / malfunction switch. Okay, and the same wire goes down to the horn switch. Okay, so when you press the horn switch, we close this switch to send ground down this wire. Okay, so there is ground that flows down this wire, which comes to this relay and energizes the coil of the relay, and then this switch gets pulled to the left to close this circuit, okay, to send power to the horns. Okay, so now let's go back under the hood and check for two powers at the horn relay sockets. If we do have power there, then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down this wire, okay, and make sure that we have ground down this wire when we press the horn switch. Okay, when we press the horn switch, we should have ground flowing down this wire to energize the relay. And while we're pressing the horn switch, if we don't have ground on this wire, that's going to tell me that our issue is most likely up here at the switch. Okay, now let's go back to the relay and make sure we have our two powers at the relay. I'm sorry for the beeping sound in the vehicle. The key is on. I have my test light connected to battery ground. If I touch power, my test light should light. So watch this. So I touch power, test light lights. So we're good. So now let's check for two power. I hope you guys can see. Okay, so I'm gonna touch the first pin. Now I'm gently touching these pins. I'm not stuffing my test light in there. So right there, test light lights. So first pin. Okay, so this is pin 30. Test light lights. So now we're gonna try the second pin. Gently. Now let me make sure I'm making good contact here. So right here. So I hope you can see that. So we have power here. And we also have power here. So power up here and power down here. Okay. So we have two powers at the relay. Okay, so what we are missing is the control coming from the horn switch. Now let's go inside the vehicle so I can show you what we're gonna do next. So before we go in the vehicle, I'm gonna reinstall the horn relay, because now the test that we're gonna do will be inside the vehicle. So the horn relay is reinstalled. So now let's go in the vehicle. We have power at this pin and this pin over here. So our relay has two powers. So now we're gonna focus on this leg of the circuit, okay? So I'm gonna find a way to get at this connector over here, okay? This C1 connector. I'm gonna get at this connector and see if we have ground at this connector when we energize the horn by pressing down the horn switch, okay? So now let's go in the vehicle and test that. Our horn is still not working. So now we're gonna go under the dash and find the 10 wire that sends ground down to the horn relay. So we need to find the wire that comes from the horn switch. I have this jumper wire coming from battery ground. So I have ground on this back probing tool. So if I back probe the horn wire, I mean the wire that's coming from the horn switch, since the switch sends ground to it, we're gonna be the switch with this back probing tool. If the wiring from this end down to the relay is good, the horn should work. Okay, so at this point we're basically doing the elimination process. So we need to figure out where our problem is. So process of elimination, baby. So this connector connects the wiring harness that's coming from the steering column down to the wires that are going to the fuse box. Okay, so if I look closely over here, the horn wire is going to be this wire over here. So this is the 10 wire. Okay, now we have ground on our jumper wire over here. Okay, so this is our 10 wire. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna back probe this. If the wiring from this connector all the way to the relay is good, our horn should work. So did you hear that? Okay, so what does this tell us? This tells us that from this point down to the fuse box, we're good. So our problem is up over here. So we know that our problem is up the steering wheel. So now let's go back to the steering wheel and remove the horn switch and inspect it. Okay, because when we send ground to this wire over here, our horn works. Okay, so now let's go to the horn switch and check it out. All right, so now we're gonna remove the horn switch. To get the horn switch removed, we're gonna have to put a screwdriver in this hole to release the clip that holds the horn switch on the steering wheel. And there's another hole on this side. I don't know if you can see it. You probably won't be able to see it. Okay, there's another hole over here. Okay, so I'm going to release those two clips so we can remove the horn switch. I'm gonna insert this screwdriver here and pry this up. I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. So here comes the horn switch. We're gonna disconnect this airbag connector. Okay, so we're gonna remove the switch and get it out of the way. Okay, so the screwdriver comes, pushes that little clip out there to release the switch. Okay. Okay, so that clip hooks onto that little slat there. Okay. All right, so everything here looks pretty good. I mean, I don't see any corrosion here. Let me disconnect this. So we might have a bad clock spring because I don't see what's gonna cause a problem here. Okay, our problem is most likely behind the steering wheel. I'm gonna remove the steering wheel so we can get access to the multi-function switch. Actually, the horn wire goes through the multi-function switch. So let's remove the steering wheel so we can get to the multi-function switch, because at this point our horn should work. So actually, before we remove the steering wheel, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use my ground wire over here. Okay, this wire that we're using to test the wire, the horn switch wire. So I have ground on this wire. So if I send ground down this hole, my horn should work. Okay, so I have ground on this back probing tool. So I'm gonna send ground down this hole. Okay, so when I send ground down that hole, my horn works. So we most likely have a connection issue here. So do you see this? This looks a little burnt. Okay, I hope you can see that. Okay, so this looks burnt. So the way this works is when you press the horn switch down, you basically make connection between the wheel. So the steering wheel is grounded through the steering shaft, the steering column shaft. So you push this down, you make a ground connection between the wheel itself and these plates over here. And these plates are connected to these two red wires, okay, which send ground down this hole to energize the 10 wire. I mean, to send ground down the 10 wire, which energizes the relay that turns on the horns. So I see a little bit of corrosion here. It looks like there's a burnt mark over here. So I'm gonna clean this up with the emery cloth and then I'll bring you guys back up. All right, so let's clean this contact over here with some sandpaper and see what happens. All right, so look at it. So we cleaned this contact over here. As you can see, it's nice and clean. So now let's reinstall it and see if the horn is now gonna work. So right there you go, it's fixed. No parts needed. Guess what? Corrosion between the connector on the switch and the other side of the multifunction switch. So this is fixed, guys. The problem was just corrosion over here. Okay, so we cleaned this. So we cleaned it, and now our horn is working. Okay, so that was pretty easy. Now I'm gonna reconnect my horn switch, I mean the main pad. So it's fixed. So as you can see, the horn now works. We didn't replace any parts. So this is fixed. Okay, we fixed it. So now let's wrap up this video. All right, guys, I'm gonna leave it right over here. Now the horn is working. So our driver is gonna be happy. You saw what the problem was. I'm gonna leave this right over here. I hope you liked the video. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, give it a thumb down. But if you do, you gotta tell me why so we can make better videos in the future. If this is your first time here, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so you can get notified every time I upload a new video. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave them in the comment box. Thanks for watching. See you next time. We're good.